Hey guys, I'm Dimension Jumper, and today I'll be ranking all the main storyline bosses from Tears of the Kingdom from worst to best. Now, as of time of recording this video, it has been about a month since the release of Tears of the Kingdom, and when it comes to the mainline story bosses, they feel 100% better when compared to the Blights and Calamity Ganon, to those bosses when it comes to mainline story bosses, because with the bosses in Breath of the Wild, it kind of feels like copy paste, but with different elemental attacks. With the only boss that feels different and fun to fight against is probably Monk Maz, which is a part of the DLC for the Champion's Ballad in that game, whereas the bosses in Tears of the Kingdom feel very, very different from one another, and they don't feel the same. They feel different when it comes to their attacks, the movement patterns, and how you deal damage to them. And in this video, I'll be ranking them from going from number 8 being the worst and number 1 being the best. So for number 8 is Queen Gibdo. Now, Queen Gibdo, in my opinion, feels like the largest letdown in terms of the bosses in the game, because Queen Gibdo feels like a normal Gibdo, but larger, and it kind of feels like that to me, because Queen Gibdo kind of feels like Nintendo were running out of time in terms of thinking of how to create bosses, or thinking of what bosses what they wanted to add, and they felt like, oh, let's just make a Gibdo but larger and it can fly. It kind of felt like that to me, and I was half expecting to fight Twin Rover in the Lightning Temple, which is near the Gerudo town, or Gerudo City, and I was half expecting to fight them. But with Queen Gibdo, it just feels like fighting. It kind of feels like that mission in Gerudo City, where you have to defend Riju from all of the different Gibdos, and it kind of feels like that, but in a boss fight. And I don't really like it. It kind of feels like, because when it comes to the halfway stage, Queen Gibdo will summon more Gibdos, and it feels like just extra work, just having to fight not only the Gibdos and destroy their nests, but also fighting Queen Gibdo herself, and it just feels like really, really much busy work and much padding for the fight. And I don't really like this boss. It just falls flat for me, and it just feels like a waste of a boss fight. And I was kind of half expecting Twin Rover, as I said before, because Twin Rover is kind of connected to Gerudo, or to the Gerudo in some way, because they were the ones that helped raise Ganondorf, so I was kind of half expecting them to be the boss. For number 7 is Mokto Rock. Now, Mokto Rock is the boss of the Water Temple, and I feel like it's an okay boss, but it's like, I feel like it's kind of annoying in some parts. I think it's a lot better than Queen Gibdo, but it can get annoying very fast, because in order to deal any damage, you have to hit its sort of shark self with water stuff. So like either silence ability or water fused arrows, and that can be fun. I think it's a nice, interesting way of fighting the boss, but it does get annoying quite fast, where you either miss or you get stuck in the muck that the boss spews out. And design-wise, when you reduce the Mokto Rock to its basic self, it does look very interesting. It feels like something you never have really seen before. It kind of feels like if Nintendo took the concept of, or the design of, the boss in the second dungeon in the Phantom Hourglass, but just made it smaller, and instead of using wind, it uses muck and stuff. So it kind of feels like a bit like that, but smaller and a little bit more interesting. And I think it's kind of interesting, but it kind of feels like it could have been a whole lot better. For number 6 is Seized Construct. Now, this boss is okay, I guess. It has some nice elements. I do like the whole sumo wrestling concept that it has in the game. Um, However, it's not. It just feels like, again, with Queen Gibdo, it kind of feels rushed in the sense that Nintendo were running out of ideas for a boss, so they probably thought, or the developers of the game thought, okay, let's just have Link fighting a boss that kind of looks like one of his allies in the game, and yeah, I feel like that kind of felt like just a rushed in process instead of just having probably something that's related to the dungeon itself. I mean, the Spirit Temple, in a way to get to it, you have to find these different construct the facility areas where you can find the different Zonai devices, so like the fan, the wrecking ball, the rocket, that kind of thing. But yeah, to me, it feels like rush and padding. So yeah. For number 5 is Puppet Ganondorf. Now, Puppet Ganondorf is quite interesting because like throughout the whole throughout the whole game, when you're doing all the temples and stuff, you are told about all of the companions, all of the people that you meet, saying that they have seen Zelda, and when you go to Hyrule Castle to find her, it turns out that she was more of a puppet for Gandalf, and it turns out to be becoming Puppet Gandalf as you see her, as you see the puppet Zelda just sort of like become more puppet-like and becoming that puppet Ganondorf. And for this fight, I think it's a really enjoyable fight. It's kind of like all of the Gloom fights or the Gloom hand fights in the game that you can find scattered around Hyrule, but instead of just being one Gloom hand which becomes a Puppet Ganondorf, it's multiple Puppet Ganondorfs at once, and you just have to fight them all in a big horde. And I do like how where sometimes where one of the Puppet Ganondorfs will stop and sort of summon gloom all around the main Hyrule King Chamber area, which is really, really interesting because it really makes you think on your feet of, okay, where is the Puppet Gandalf creating the gloom, and how can I try and stop him from spreading it over the battle room, as well as trying to keep focused on the other Puppet Gandalfs as well. And I do like how the champion sages sort of come in to help you. That's a really fun thing to do, and you don't really normally see that in other Zelda games where the friends that you've met along in your journey come in to help you fight a boss. So yeah, the only thing that I've kind of seen something like that is probably in Skyward Sword with Bruce when he helps you fight the imprisoned. So it's kind of nice and quite cool. For number 4 is Dragon Ganon, or Demon Dragon. Well, I'm gonna probably call him Demon Ganon, or no, Dragon Ganon, just so people can. I think it'll be easier for me. So for Dragon Ganon, it's a really interesting like final phase for the final boss, because it feels a whole lot different from Beast Ganon in Breath of the Wild, because with Beast Ganon it was just fire lasers, and that was kind of it. And it's somewhat similar in this phase for Dragon Ganon, but it feels a lot more life threatening in terms of how you fight him, because there are these sort of eyeball things on the back in which you have to hit, and because Dragon Ganon is covered in gloom, that will make your health go down, or not be, or it will disable your hearts, and I think that's a whole lot better and a lot more creative use of the fight and with Dragon Ganon as a whole, because with Beast Ganon in Breath of the Wild, it kind of felt like he just fired lasers and they would barely hurt you. So with Dragon Ganon, I think it's a really cool way of just fighting the final boss. And I do like how towards the end, you can, because in order to do the final blow, you have to hit his tear, which is on the top of his head. And I do like how throughout the whole fight, Zelda in her dragon form comes in to help you, because she lets you ride on her head. And I do like how if you're not able to fight all of the or destroy all of the gloom eyes, you can just jump off Ganon's body and then onto Zelda and then find a better vantage point. And I do really like how at the very, very end, when you've completely destroyed Dragon Ganon, he just explodes and just creates this giant red vortex thing. It's really fun, and I think that's an awesome way of taking out Ganon. For number 3 is Gohma. Now, Gohma is the boss of the Fire Temple, and this is a very different version of Gohma, because a lot of the other Gohma fights are more spider-like, or that designed of a spider. The closest one is probably the one in Twilight Princess, where Gohma is an actual spider. But with Gohma in this game, it's different but the same in a sort of sense. So so in the fight, you have to use Yunobo to try and hit the legs and then afterwards hit the eye. And yeah, that's very interesting, and it's a very different way of fighting Gohma. And I do like how Gohma is completely made out of rock. It's like just Gohma, but as a huge 4-legged spider rock or rock spider thing. And again, when it came to the Fire Temple, I was half expecting King Dodongo, because King Dodongo and the Gorons and the Fire Temple theme are kind of one the same. In my opinion, I feel like King Dodongo goes really well with the Fire Temple, but I'll happily take Gohma over King Dodongo, because I feel like Gohma in this fight is the most interesting fight out of a lot of the other fights in the game, because when it comes to the second phase, Gohma, like in Twilight Princess and Ocarina of Time, will go on the ceiling, and instead of throwing out or creating its own spider larvae, I believe, it will send out rocks and which are time to explode. And I do like how with this part of the fight, you have to use Yunobo to destroy the legs, but it's a bit more harder, because you have to aim and then fire, and that can kind of get annoying. But it's interesting to try and figure out, okay, this is where a leg is. Okay, I have to destroy that leg. Okay, and then that leg is destroyed. And yeah, it's a fairly fun boss fight, and I do like how this is a new version of Gohma, and I do like how it's how with each Zelda game that has Gohma, it takes the concept of Gohma and just makes it different and makes it new and fresh and not too similar to other fights. So yeah, for number 2 is Ganondorf. Now, Ganondorf's fight is really, really fun. It's probably my favourite version of Ganondorf to fight against in any of the games that he's appeared in, whether that's in Ocarina of Time or The Wind Waker or Twilight Princess. And what I really like about this fight is that this feels like a fight. With the other versions of Ganondorf, they felt like fights, but it felt very one-sided in the sense that you would always win and always able to take out Ganondorf without taking that much damage. In this version of the fight for Ganondorf, not only can you deal damage to Ganondorf, but he can give you damage about the same amount of damage taken that you might give to him, because he summons out different weapons. He will start with a sword, and then he'll bring out a club, or a Gloom Club, and a Lance as well, I believe. And yeah, this goes off the rails because not only can he disable your hearts, but he can also destroy them as well, which is insane because like out of all the games that I've played when it comes to the Legend of Zelda, I've never seen something like this where the final boss disables your hearts permanently until you've been the final boss and been the game as a whole. And I do like how this version of Ganondorf puts up a fight because Ganondorf, because in the game, in both Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, you can flurry rush pretty much every single enemy and boss in the game. Not only can you do that, but also Ganondorf can do the same thing. He can flurry rush your flurry rush, and in order to counterattack, not only will you have to make sure you flurry rush his flurry rush. So that's so insane, and that's so cool because you don't really normally see that in games where the final boss just dodges your attack like that. And what I like about this as well, another thing that I really like about this is that in the second phase of the fight, where he gets all his with glowing hair and it gets more powerful, his health bar, instead of just being the normal full length of a normal boss health bar in the game, like you've seen in like Breath of the Wild and the other bosses in Tears of the Kingdom, it continues. So it gets like normal health bar, secondary health bar. It just continues, and it's like that again. That's never happened before, where a boss will just get more health and more powerful in this part of the fight, and that's really interesting. And you never really, again, I know I'm repeating myself. You never see this in video games, and this is a fight that's really fun. It's in a small boss arena, and it's just really, really fun, and it's just a really fun final boss, and I do hope we get to see more fights like this in future Zelda games. And for number 1 is Colgera. Now, Colgera is probably my favourite boss in Tears of the Kingdom, mainly because of how this fight is done, because like it's the only boss in the game that takes place in the air. And what I like about this fight is that of how it's done, because Colgera, in order to deal damage to it, you have to try and if you want to deal damage to Colgera, you have to try and hit these sort of huge chunks of ice that have these sort of web things that Colgera has, and in order to make them like visible in order for attack, Colgera has to take off these ice shard things, and then you can attack. And that's so fun. And this is probably the only boss in Tears of the Kingdom that takes place in the air. I'm not including the Gleeok fight because that's more of a mini boss fight. And with Colgera in the second phase, I do like how it summons tornadoes in order to try and make you fall to the ground and stuff like that. And I also like how after beating, I think after hitting each ice chunk with the web, it will teleport. It will go from like one side of the screen to the other side of the screen and teleport underneath you, and that's really cool and fun. And I do like how you can dodge it by using Tulin, because Tulin's ability is to sort of push you forwards in a certain area. It's kind of like Rivali's Scale in Breath of the Wild, but more condensed and more small in a sort of sense. And yeah, so and I do like Colgera's. I do like the theme song for Colgera for the boss fight. I'm not too sure if I can play it because it might get copyrighted. But I'll probably leave a link to it in the description below so you guys can hear it for yourself. And I think that's really what really makes it fun for me for the Colgera fight. It's because of the music, and I do like how the fight the music just helps amplify the fights 100 times better. And for its design, Colgera looks cool. It's basically this giant flying insect thing, and I think it's somewhat a really fun boss battle, and I do really enjoy it. So that's been my video of ranking all of the boss fights from Tears of the Kingdom. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.